Welcome to the debate. What do you already know about yourself, but keep postponing acting on?
That is, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. It cuts right to the core of, high performance. Usually when we talk about executive leadership and strategy on the show, there's this expectation of clinical precision.
Right.
You identify a market gap, you deploy a strategic initiative, and the data tells you if it worked. It's a clean, rational process.
On paper, anyway.
Exactly, on paper. But then you look at the private lives and the daily habits of these exact same highly intelligent entrepreneurs. People who optimize everything, who have read all the leadership books, taken the master classes, they know the exact mechanics of what they should be doing.
Yeah, they know it inside out.
And suddenly, that rational precision just, well, vanishes.
It completely disappears. They are still repeating the exact same destructive habits under pressure. We're looking at a behavioral landscape that is entirely disconnected from their intellectual capacity.
Which brings us to the focus of today's discussion. We are digging into Musab Khaldi's Four Interior Empires framework. Specifically, this framework breaks human performance down into four areas. You have mindset, which is your psychology; health set, your physical biology; heart set, your emotional intelligence; and soul set, your deeper purpose.
And we're using this framework today to examine exactly why high achievers suffer from this knowing-doing gap and how to actually bridge it.
Right.
This and thinking, I know I need to change how I react to my team, but I just don't have the time to deal with it right now. That exact thought process is what we're dissecting today.
Absolutely. So let me lay my cards on the table right up front. I argue that this knowing-doing gap is fundamentally a problem of systemic fragmentation.
Okay.
Leaders fail to act on what they know because they lack a structured biological architecture. They fail because they treat their cognitive intentions, their mindset, as totally separate from their physical capacity, their health set.
And I take a fundamentally different view on this. While building better behavioral systems sounds great in theory, I argue that this gap is primarily an identity and vulnerability problem.
How so?
Well, leaders use their vast knowledge as a form of armor. They resist changing their habits because doing so threatens their established identity of control. So they don't necessarily need a more rigorous morning schedule. They need the honest mirror of accountability to dismantle that armor and access their heart set.
Let's break that open. In Khaldi's framework, there's this archetype I find fascinating: the stuck self-developer.
Oh, yes. The content consumers.
Yes. Think about the founder who consumes endless optimization content. They know the neuroscience, they buy the cold plunge, but they fail to fundamentally change how they lead under stress. Because recognizing a problem is not the same as changing a pattern.
Right. Information
alone does not rewire the brain. When these leaders face real, crushing pressure, they fail because a strong mind simply cannot execute if the body is running on fumes.
But hold on, you're looking at the symptom and calling it the disease. The real cause of repeated self-sabotage in successful people isn't that they forgot to optimize their sleep or their schedule.
It's a huge part of it, though.
No, it's an identity issue. Take another archetype from the framework, the successful but empty leader. These are grade A individuals who have built remarkable things on paper, but feel entirely disconnected from their success.
Sure, they feel empty.
Right. So changing their behavior isn't about setting an alarm for 5 a.m. to check off a biological protocol. It requires shedding the cold confidence that built their initial success in the first place.
I have to push back there. Because you cannot shed cold confidence if your nervous system is in a state of perpetual biological panic.
Biological panic? Isn't that overstating it?
Not at all. Let's look at the literal biological constraints of leadership. Khaldi talks about this one founder in the framework, a guy with a remarkably strong mindset and incredible strategic vision, but he was sleeping 4 hours a night.
Okay, yeah.
And under pressure, every brilliant decision he made collapsed. Why? Because under real stress, your prefrontal cortex, the logic and decision-making center of your brain, simply cannot function without the physical infrastructure of the health set.
So you're saying it's just an energy management problem?
It is absolutely an energy management problem. Expecting high-level mindset work to hold up under pressure without physical vitality is like trying to run advanced enterprise software on a smartphone with a 2% battery.
That's a fun analogy, but
The software isn't the problem. The intentions are good, but the hardware literally does not have the power to execute the code. You cannot outthink a biological tax. During deep sleep, your brain literally washes itself. The glymphatic system clears out metabolic waste. If you skip that, your brain is functioning in a toxic environment.
right.
7 to 9 hours of sleep isn't some trivial lifestyle choice. It's a biological prerequisite for neural rewiring.
I'm not denying the biology of sleep. Obviously, clearing metabolic waste is important, but I question the hierarchy of intervention here.
What do you mean?
Let's say that same founder gets his 8 hours of sleep. His prefrontal cortex is fully charged, the metabolic waste is gone. I argue that he will still revert to old, destructive interpersonal patterns if he lacks heart-brain coherence.
Explain what you mean by that in practical terms.
Look, highly intellectual leaders love to hide behind physical optimization. It is a very comfortable evasion.
Evasion.
Yes, focusing purely on physical vitality allows them to feel like they are working on themselves without actually looking at themselves. Taking an ice bath is a safe struggle. It doesn't require you to admit you were wrong in a board meeting.
Well, they're different things entirely.
But leaders frequently use the illusion of being too busy to exercise, or they wear their sleep deprivation as a badge of honor, specifically as a defense mechanism. It's an unconscious strategy to avoid the deep discomfort of changing who they are and how they relate to others.
But again, the founder in Caldy's framework had a breakthrough precisely when he realized energy beats time. Within 1 week of fixing his sleep architecture, his decision quality skyrocketed. We have to acknowledge that physical exhaustion fundamentally impairs emotional regulation.
Of course it does.
You can't ask someone to be emotionally vulnerable when they are biologically exhausted.
True. But you can have the most physically vital executive in the world, and if their heart set is guarded, they will just be a well-rested tyrant. They will still rule through control rather than connection. Which brings us to how we actually help these individuals change.
It centers on the true role of accountability.
Accountability is critical, yes.
But it's fundamentally misunderstood when we talk about high achievers. For brilliant entrepreneurs, accountability coaching is not about being controlled, shamed, or pushed to hustle harder. Absolutely not.
These are founders. They already push themselves straight into burnout. They don't need a taskmaster.
True accountability is about providing that honest mirror. It's a peer-to-peer exchange that creates a moment of profound self-awareness. It's about being seen, not fixed.
I agree entirely that shame doesn't work. Treating a CEO like a truant school child who didn't do their homework is completely counterproductive. But I firmly disagree that an honest mirror alone is sufficient. Awareness is just the beginning.
But if they truly see themselves, the change follows.
Not always. The mirror shows you the flaw, yes, but you need an architecture to rebuild the structure. Accountability must provide that structure. It's about ensuring small, consistent actions are executed until they become automatic.
Caldy's framework outlines a very specific 90-minute daily schedule for this exact reason.
Right.
It mandates owning the first hour of the day, specifically the 5 to 6 a.m. window, and doing the 20-20-20 protocol.
And for the listener who isn't familiar, walk through exactly what that 20-20-20 protocol is demanding of them.
It's highly structured. You move and sweat for 20 minutes to get the heart rate up. You reflect for 20 minutes, and you learn for 20 minutes. Accountability is the bridge between what a person already knows matters in that honest mirror and what they actually do when no one is watching.
Okay, but
And there is a profound biological reason for this structure. When you push your heart rate up during that morning protocol, your body releases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
the brain fertilizer.
Exactly. It's literally miracle grow for your brain. It fertilizes the neural pathways, meaning the brain becomes physically more adaptable. You can't just think your way into neuroplasticity. You can't just stare into an honest mirror and become a different leader.
Right, but
You have to physically create the conditions in your brain to unlock that adaptability. That's why accountability to a physical system is non-negotiable.
okay, but structure without an identity shift is just another cage the high achiever is building for themselves. Let's look at your 5 to 6 a.m. protocol.
Sure.
If a leader forces himself out of bed at 5 a.m. purely out of discipline and willpower, they might elevate their BDNF and dopamine, yes. But if they take that elevated cognitive state into the boardroom and continue to lead with a fear-based scarcity mindset, what have we actually achieved? We haven't bridged the knowing-doing gap, we've just subsidized it with better biology.
But the physical action and the emotional outcome are inextricably linked. You are treating them as separate things.
Because for the armored leader, they often are separate. The stuck self-developer knows the 20-20-20 rule. They know movement is medicine. They don't do it, or they do it but fail to translate it into leadership, because executing the reflection portion of that protocol means they have to stop numbing themselves with work. They have to face the quiet. The accountability I'm talking about is the kind that forces them to ask the difficult questions during that quiet. Like, why does all this success still feel empty?
And that brings us to the core thesis of Caldi's material. Empires aren't built in isolation, they're built through integration. The danger here is fragmentation.
Exactly.
If you focus on mindset work without heart set, you absolutely get that cold confidence that pushes people away. I agree with you there. But if you do heart work without health set, you get emotional depth but zero energy to execute your vision. If you have health work without soul set, you have physical vitality but spiritual emptiness.
I don't disagree with the goal of integration, but sequential integration, fixing biology to hack psychology, sounds beautiful in theory, but it falls apart in practice.
How so?
Let's look at the reality of dealing with an intellectually gifted, highly armored leader. How do you force them to actually integrate these empires when they are deeply subconsciously terrified of the heart set?
Why do you assume they are terrified of it?
Because the data tells us what is required for high performance, and yet they avoid it. If you look at the data Google pulled from Project Aristotle, psychological safety is the #1 predictor of team performance.
Right, that's well established.
And Caldi notes that vulnerability creates over 3 times higher psychological safety. So the logic is clear, right? Be vulnerable, increase performance. But for a founder who built their success on being bulletproof, admitting I handled that wrong or I'm uncertain about this quarter's projections feels like losing control. It feels like death to their ego. Isn't your beautiful architectural system totally useless until that armor is dropped?
Not at all. In fact, that is exactly why the behavioral system starts small and relies on physiology to hack the psychology. You ask how we get them to drop the armor?
Yes.
The answer is that movement and breath work physically lower cortisol, the stress hormone that keeps them locked in fight or flight.
So you're bypassing the psychology entirely at first.
Exactly. When you take a highly stressed founder and put them through the 15-minute heart-brain coherence practice at 6 a.m., you are utilizing breath work to transition their nervous system out of the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight state, and into the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest state.
And for those who haven't dug into the biology here, heart-brain coherence isn't just a metaphor. It's a measurable physiological state where your heart rhythm patterns synchronize with your brain waves.
Exactly. And you trigger it through specific paced breathing. You are making it biologically easier for that leader to access the vulnerability you want them to reach. You aren't just telling them to be emotionally intelligent. You are creating the physiological safety required for emotional intelligence to emerge. The system doesn't wait for the armor to drop. The system dismantles the biological locks on the armor.
I see the utility in that. Using the body to calm the mind is scientifically sound, but I still argue that the decision to engage in that breathwork, to really lean into the heart coherence rather than just treating it as another box to check on their habit tracker, requires a fundamental willingness to surrender control.
It takes commitment, yes.
We are talking about people who deeply believe the myth that strength means never showing weakness. If they do the breath work just to optimize their heart rate variability metric on their wearable device, they are still missing the point. The shift has to be from accumulation to contribution. They have to move from isolation to connection.
But how do they get there? The bridge is habit. They get there by installing the habits before the mindset fully catches up.
Caldy points out that it takes 12 days to build the awareness and install the systems, and 66 days for those systems to become automatic.
Right. During that time, the brain physically changes. This isn't just about motivation, it's about neural rewiring. When they engage in intentional movements and structure, they are literally constructing a brain that is more capable of the vulnerability you're asking for. Okay, well, if we are talking about what actually drives this transformation, let's look at the soul set aspect of the Four Empires framework. I think this actually bridges our perspectives. Caldy talks about day 10 in his protocol, which is the shift from success to meaning.
Ah, the mortality meditation.
Yes, the mortality meditation. Imagining you have exactly 6 months to live. This isn't about elevating BDNF or clearing metabolic waste through sleep architecture. This is a profound, jarring identity intervention.
It forces a massive perspective shift.
Massive. When a leader is asked to seriously contemplate that they have 6 months left, it strips away the optimization trap. You don't optimize your calendar or your profit margins when you have 6 months to live. You optimize your impact. It asks, what impact do I want to leave? Who do I want to serve?
It's incredibly grounding.
When a leader shifts from the internal dialogue of, I have everything but nothing matters, to, I'm giving to others, now everything matters. That is a heart set and soul set victory. That is the moment they become anti-fragile. The biological systems you're talking about only hold up under pressure if they are anchored to this deeper purpose. Otherwise, the moment the pressure gets too high, they will just abandon the 5 a.m. alarm.
I entirely agree that purpose anchors the system. The framework explicitly states this chain of dependency. Your prefrontal cortex logic can't function without heart coherence, which can't sustain without physical vitality, and none of it matters without purpose anchoring the entire system. Where we differ is the sequence of getting there.
Right.
You want to start by showing them the mirror of their empty success through accountability. I want to start by making sure they have the cognitive and physical bandwidth to actually look in that mirror without shattering.
But the mirror is what creates the commitment to the sequence. Think about approaching a leader who is highly successful but scattered and reactive. You can't just hand them a 90-minute schedule and say, do this.
Well, you have to frame it correctly.
You have to create a moment of self-awareness first. You have to ask them, what is the one area where you keep starting but not finishing? You call them out gently. You make them articulate the problem out loud. That articulation is an act of vulnerability. From there, yes, implement the small biological changes to create momentum. But the identity shift is the catalyst.
The articulation is important, but without the immediate installation of a behavioral architecture, that self-awareness just turns into guilt. They know they're failing their team, they feel bad about it, but they don't know how to act differently in the moment.
I see what you're saying. That's why Callie is so insistent on owning the first hour of the day. Set your alarm, no exceptions. This first hour rewires everything. It's a deliberate physical action that proves to the self that change is happening. It moves them out of the abstract realm of, I should be more vulnerable, into the concrete reality of, I am taking control of my biology today so I can serve my team better tomorrow.
You know, I think we're circling the exact same profound truth, just approaching it from two different hemispheres. You view the biology as the gateway to the psychology. You believe that if we fix the machinery, the ghost in the machine will calm down. Well said. Yes, I do.
And I view emotional honesty as the permission slip for the biological optimization. When a founder finally realizes that their desperate need for control is actually what is exhausting them, and that leading with authenticity is magnetic, not weak, they suddenly have a profound reason to sleep 7 hours.
Exactly.
They have a reason to do the heart-brain coherence practice. They aren't just optimizing for revenue anymore. They are optimizing for peace, generosity, and connection.
And that integration of all four empires is precisely where the magic happens. We've covered a lot of ground today. If we pull this together, my position remains that meaningful change requires a deliberate next step beyond mere awareness.
Right.
Highly intelligent people get stuck in the knowing-doing gap because they rely on information rather than building a physical and behavioral architecture, specifically integrating the mindset and health set that can actually sustain their intentions under the crushing weight of real-world pressure.
And I maintain that this physical and structural architecture will ultimately collapse if the leader isn't willing to face an honest mirror. True transformation requires a shift in identity, shedding the armor of cold confidence, and accepting a form of accountability that supports emotional vulnerability rather than just demanding more hustle.
We certainly agree that recognizing a problem is only the beginning. Awareness is necessary, but it demands action. Accountability, true accountability, isn't about control. It's about empathy combined with structure.
Yeah.
Rewiring process.
Absolutely. When you shift your internal dialogue from me to we, everything changes. It's about moving from personal ambition to purposeful contribution.
Let's bring this right back to where we started. What do you already know about yourself but keep postponing acting on? You have the blueprint now. We are inviting you to stop just looking at it and to lay the first brick.
Here.
We invite you to perform one small action today. Write down exactly one pattern you are ready to stop normalizing in your leadership or your life, and write down one specific next action you can take within the next 24 hours to address it.
Just one pattern. Just one action. Let it compound.
DM Empires for full transformation.